Chapter 4 Reload. Cerberus was bored. He was watching his pet vulture dive off the balcony towards a half-eaten animal carcass below. It was too far away to identify the animal. There wasn't much for him to do anymore. In the old days, he would wake up excited to torture the gods. He thought of the most brilliant ways to do it. Some physical, some mental, all enough to drive a man insane. But these weren't men, these were animals, and if they had their way, they would control mankind. Cerberus was more man than anyone he could think of. He was a defender of the title, and he loved making the gods say it. But today he was feeling blasé to all of that. He wasn't even excited about torturing them for once. Something in the distance caught his eye. It was a Bastet, but it was limping back towards the Great Pyramid along the river. What in the hells? The vulture screeched joyously from below at the sound of his scratchy voice. Then it went back to ripping off chunks of stinking meat. The Bastet was dragging with it a cloud of black smog, as if it was leaking noxious fumes, and he could hear its gears, even from far away, making ugly, inconsistent sounds. The enormous beast dragged itself across the sand, and Cerberus watched a mechanical warehouse door open up in the side of the Great Pyramid. The Bastet limped into the warehouse, and the door was slid shut, returning the face of the pyramid to its normal, smooth face. That was strange. Who could have done something like this to Hephaestus' prized warrior? Cerberus spat off the edge of the balcony towards the warehouse door. That cocky bitch. He was glad someone had finally slapped back at her. Still, he pondered what this could mean for the rest of the NDO. If news got out to the public that the Bastets had a weakness, that could lead to some sort of uprising. Did the townspeople need to be reprimanded? Did they do this to the mechanical beast? Cerberus decided he had to speak with Hephaestus, which meant he had to go downstairs into her laboratory. The place had so many dark experiments out in the open, it made even the guard of hell uneasy. Cerberus stretched out his hand and pressed a button on a machine he wore on his wrist. The vulture responded to the sonic command immediately, ignoring the carcass and outstretching his wings. He flew back up to the balcony in just a few short strokes to alight on Cerberus' arm. "Are you still hungry?" The guard of Hell's Gate cooed to the bird. "I think there may be a feast for you soon." Plan. "I'm confused. Why do you think this is possible again?" Seteth asked the eagle. He was standing on the right side of the raft, rowing, and the eagle was on the left, rowing. Cleo was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the raft, examining the eagle's map of the Great Pyramid. They were headed down the Nile towards the pyramid with the intention of stopping at the eagle's stash spot for ammunition. "Because I know things. What don't you get about that?" "It's not that I don't trust you. It's just that I think you're a lunatic," Seteth said. "Name me one thing I've been wrong about," the eagle said. "I just met you yesterday, and I've said quite a lot." Cleopatra cleared her throat. "Let's go over the plan again." The gods looked away from each other and kept rowing. "So we're stopping by the eagle's stash spot first." "Hold on a moment," Seteth interrupted. "You call him the eagle too?" Yes," Cleopatra asked. "That's weird," Seth said. "Why?" "Because it's a weird nickname and he's your husband," Seteth clarified. The eagle chimed in. It's an official title. It's officially lame. After we get to the ammunition, Cleopatra raised her voice, we keep going down the Nile. We leave the raft before we get in sight of the pyramid, since we'll be walking around with a bunch of guns and shit. The gods nodded in agreement. We sneak our way up to the main entrance, and Seteth blows the door open with lightning, which I've never done before, and don't see it being an option we should count on, Seth said. That's not even the part I'm worried about, Seteth, the eagle said tiredly. I know you'll be able to do it when the moment comes. I saw you control the storm last night. You mean the coincidence that a storm came when I happened to be angry? Call it what you want, the eagle said. Once we're inside, we'll be met by the Bastetts almost immediately. There could be 8 of them in there. 8 is the most I've ever counted. Well, I guess that would mean there'd be 7 now. We know you killed a Bastet, Seth rolled his eyes. But he was only kidding. He loved that the eagle had killed the Bastet. Maybe he was a little envious. And we used the rubble caused by the lightning as cover because the Bastetts are clumsy at digging, Cleo said. How much lightning is there going to be in this plan? Seteth said. He was still dubious. A lot. I mean, you're a god. You're just going to have to do a big god thing, the eagle encouraged. We move in a group clockwise around the rubble, aiming to take out the Bastet one at a time, Cleopatra continued. Then, using the rubble like a roundabout, we run inside the Great Pyramid when we get to the part of the turn. We blast this door open with the bullets we have left in our barrels at the time. She pointed on the map. And we don't think the Bastetts can get through the door, or it will at least slow them down. From there, we can reload and sprint to here, which is the first cell we want to unlock. At least that's where they keep the god they're scared of the most. What if that god doesn't want to help us? Seth asked. That god wants to get out. And he's going to freak out when his energy fuses with yours, god of chaos. And the two of you are going to go on a warpath, ultimately leading to our safe escape, the eagle said happily. If this doesn't work, we're all going to die, Seteth said. Yeah, but if we die, we get reincarnated, and, round 2, the eagle said. If I get reincarnated, I'm just going to be human again, Cleopatra said sadly. I'll find you again, babe, the eagle said, bending over to kiss the top of her head. Gross, Seteth said. Arrest. Jack Winehouse demanded answers. He would return to the Great Pyramid and confront the New Dynasty Order tonight, and he wasn't going to go alone this time. The times of quiet understanding between the police and the NDO were coming to an end, and frankly, he was afraid of how they were going to react tonight. But by sending the Bastetts into the Mesmer estate to wreak havoc, they disobeyed the law, and it was as simple as that. The NDO needed to be shown repercussions for breaking the law, just like everybody else. The issue was they were basically a team of supervillains, and each of them were unhinged. Plus, they were filthy rich. They came with a swarm of lawyers who have paved the way for them to get away with anything they wanted. Jack's team of police were each armed with scimitars and handguns. There were 5 of them, including Jack, 4 men and 1 woman. They were each specialists in their respective fields. There were sharpshooters, there were private investigators, and there were covert operations specialists. Jack felt stronger with them behind him, but he was still afraid of the NDO. He wasn't planning on arresting them tonight, but depending on how the conversation went, he was prepared to, especially Hephaestus. He just hoped it would go peacefully, although everything in his gut told him to tread lightly. Oasis. The group made it to the stash spot, which turned out to be a little shed that the eagle had built deep into the forest and locked with a padlock. So this is where you keep your guns? Cleopatra asked. She had a tone. It's charming, isn't it? The eagle said. It's hardly safe. What if kids broke in here? They'd never be grounded again, the eagle said. That's not funny, Cleo said. Come on, let's see them, Seteth urged. The eagle opened the lock and swung open the little door. Ta-da, he said. They were looking at a surprisingly organized little arsenal of hand cannons, bullets, and daggers, each with hand-carved names or ornate decorations on the handles. Don't be shy. Pick what calls out to you, the eagle said. Seteth's eyes were wide and he was excited. How did you get all of these? I've been collecting, the eagle said simply. Must be nice to be rich, Seteth thought. It's far enough away from the cities to practice here, the eagle said, and I have more than enough rounds. So let's get to it. I've shot before at ranges with Dad, Cleo said proudly. You'll be great then. Seteth, what about you? The eagle asked. Seth shook his head. Okay, no problem. The biggest thing we can get done in a short time is to prepare you for the recoil. You'll be a natural, I can tell. Do you think we're rushing into this too soon? Cleopatra asked. The eagle shook his head. No, they're looking for us right now, and I'm sick of always staying away from the Bastets. It's exhausting. We have just as much a right to live as anyone else, and it's time we reclaim that right. The team set up a little range in the woods and practiced. Seteth's natural boldness was a benefit to him. He wasn't afraid of the weapons, and it helped him keep his hands steady. Whether he would be able to do it with the Bastet charging him remained to be seen. But after a few hours blowing away targets and bottles, he felt more confident than he did before. Cleopatra was great. She hit every target the eagle asked her to, even far-away ones that impressed him quite a bit. Honestly, she might have been better at aim than him, and he felt proud of her. If we get separated, we're going to meet back here, okay? The eagle instructed. But the plan is to stick together. Can I have some time limit, Seteth? Cleopatra asked. Of course, my love. The eagle happily scurried away into the woods. Cleopatra chuckled to herself and mumbled, He's such a goober. Seth looked at her, not knowing what to say. Cleo looked at him for a long time, trying to find words. I'm sorry, Seth. I'm so sorry. I should have come down to the crypt more, or I should have broken you out sooner. Mom told me you would die if you ever got out, and I didn't know what to do. We were just kids when you disappeared. Seteth hugged her. It's okay, sis. I don't blame you for anything. I loved when you visited me. They held each other for a long time, and then when Cleopatra pulled away, she said, Where did you go? I went down the river. I lived in the ghettos and sold fish for a couple years. The people were mean. Then a trader took me in, and he's been a good friend. I hope he's okay. What's his name? Cleo asked. Ilian, Seteth said. Well, I'm glad you made a friend, she said. That made them quiet. They could see the eagle still wandering in the woods, far away now, staying out of hearing distance. So you like him? Seth asked. My husband? Cleopatra laughed. Yeah, I do. It wasn't an arranged marriage. Cleo laughed again. No, it wasn't. And Dad wasn't happy about it either, until the eagle won him over. I don't know how he did it. He probably manipulated him with his truth eye, Seth said. Wouldn't you? Cleopatra asked. Seteth paused and thought about it. Seteth, you're a god. You have powers. I can't wait to see what you can do. Are you sad you're not a god too? He asked her. She nodded quietly. Don't be, Seteth said. It was scary in the crypt. I wish I was human. They hugged again. Seth, "Whatever happens tonight, I'm just glad you came back," Cleopatra said. Haircut. Anubis pinched her forefinger against her thumb around a single one of her long hairs, and had used her god power to create the tiniest little flame. The hair cleanly fell apart, and she moved on to the next one, making sure it was the perfect length. She had been in her cell since birth, 20 years ago, with only her dreams of past glory to keep her company. She didn't mind it too much. She loved tombs. This was a safe place for her. But still, she wished she could see the outside world, and she wished that she was in the cell on her own volition. She hated the idea of a world where humans had put her there. How had the gods fallen so far? Anubis went on like that, one hair at a time, all day, until she was satisfied with the haircut. She'd seen herself in reflections in her dreams, and she did her best, even in confinement, to look that way. As night fell, her gaze drifted to the door of her cell. The cement was charred after 1,000,000 escape attempts, which would consist of her focusing all her concentration on the door, heating it until her skin was blistering. Embers and flames would lick all around her, finding nothing to feed off of. It was useless trying to escape, but after powerful dreams, she would try, missing the sky, missing the touch of another being, missing the flavor of a bloody steak. It sounded like there was a storm coming. She could hear distant thunder. It was incredible to hear something out of the ordinary, and she got goosebumps on her arms. She pressed her ear against the blackened door, listening for more thunder. Oh, what a raucous the sky must be. She imagined adventures and battles and romance. If only she was outside of that cell. But for now, this was her place where they fed her slop to keep her alive until inevitably she would set herself on fire and roll the dice again in reincarnation. One day, maybe. But today, she just laid on her back and listened to the thunder begin to rumble. Let it rip. Setet was standing on a tall rock with both of his arms outstretched. He could only hardly believe it, but he was summoning a rager of a thunderstorm. It had taken all of about 10 minutes to do it, and he was feeling more powerful than he had ever felt before. All he had to do was will it to happen. At first, it wasn't working, but the eagle told him to connect with his past self, which his anger and his rage. Setet had dug deep, and that's when it started happening. First, the wind picked up, then the thunder rolled in from the distance. After about 5 minutes of that, the rain started, and lightning lit up the sky. It was beautiful. That's what I'm talking about, the eagle was ecstatic. He was pacing around behind Seth, cheering him on. The wind was so loud he wasn't afraid to yell. He howled up at the storm, half screaming, half laughing. This is finally happening, he said, to himself more than anybody else. A particularly loud crash of thunder ripped through the air. Setet could see the enormous Great Pyramid before him and the door he was planning on demolishing by lightning strike just below him. In the distance, they could see 2 Bastets on patrol, but they had shown no signs of the storm, and they were far out of range to detect the gods. That said, they were sure to mobilize as the infiltration began. Setet looked down on the massive beasts, his enemies. He was feeling ready. He knew it was time to summon the lightning. Setet turned his head and looked back at Cleo. "You ready, sis?" he yelled over the storm. He didn't have to ask the eagle. It was clear that the man was bursting with enthusiasm. "Let it rip," Cleopatra called back. Her hands were on the handles of the 2 pistols on her sides. All 3 of them had 2 pistols, a dagger, and several rolls of extra bullets. They were as ready as they were ever going to be, and Setet's body was rejoicing with the sudden flex of power that had been slumbering within him for so long. Setet let it rip. He stretched his arms as high as they could go, and the lowest thunder yet slowly built. The sky had got completely dark, and the rain was pouring now. He pulled all of his muscles together and moved his outstretched arms to a point at the door. "Now!" he screamed. The world lit up brighter than day. For 3 glorious seconds, in that time, the door almost actually started vibrating, and they could hear an unhinged electrical buzz. Then, boom! The strand of lightning connected from the door to the sky, and it danced and it blazed. It was as thick as a redwood, and it shimmered and crackled in front of them. The sand and ground beneath the door were incinerated and fell away into a great crater. The door itself dematerialized almost immediately, from top to bottom, absolutely vaporized by the intensity of the lightning. Cleopatra and the gods howled into the thunderstorm. Game on. Sure enough, the Bastets activated, their red eyes shooting laser light across the desert, their heads swiveling, searching for the enemy. "Go time," the eagle shouted. The 3 of them withdrew their guns and sprinted forward off the face of the rock. They stayed upright, though the momentum of the adrenaline and the uneasiness of the sand dune made them wobbly. They were storming the Great Pyramid, taking the new dynasty order by surprise. What could go wrong? Setet was starting to familiarize himself with his own godliness, the chaotic force that had always been a proper element in his life. This was his. He didn't feel like it would keep him safe. That was not his purpose. But he felt assured it was there, and whatever was going to happen was going to become a stronger force than anything any human had ever experienced. Back up. The police team was racing through the storm on their speeders. Jack Winehouse wiped the rain from his eyes. "Something's happening," he shouted over the thunder. The Great Pyramid towered over them, and all 5 of the officers could see when the lightning came down. It was picturesque, a blast from the heavens. They watched the door get obliterated, and they watched the eyes of the Bastets glow. "Dismount!" Jack yelled. The officers swiveled to a stop, their rain-soaked bodies covered with wet sand now. They dismounted and withdrew their weapons. "Sir, what is our direction?" one of them shouted back. They all watched the team of young adults thrash clumsily down the dune, and they watched the Bastets begin to charge them. It was time to pick a side. "They're gods," Jack shouted. He was confirming the information to his own bewildered eyes. These were gods. The eagle was in front. He was shooting towards the Bastets and making his way for the enormous gaping hole in the Great Pyramid where the door used to be. The pair behind him were firing too, but being more conservative with their rounds. They were moving like a squad, and the police captain was impressed. They watched the young ones rotate around the rubble as the monster cats were almost on top of them. "Aim for the Bastets! Cover fire!" Jack commanded. A cacophony of gunshots came from all around him. The god team was moving like professionals, but the true professionals were planted in place, already hitting their marks. The first Bastet ignored several bullets bouncing off of its metallic form. It dove for the girl in the back of the god pack, swiping its big claws. As far as Jack was concerned, this was criminal activity. The Bastets had made themselves enemies of the state when they attacked the Mesmere grounds, and now they were attacking this group of young adults. Enough was enough. They had to be apprehended or destroyed. The god team worked clockwise around the rubble, keeping barely out of range of the first Bastet. Jack could see their bullets ricocheting off the cats, but not the heads of the cats. The team was aiming almost behind them, between the 2 back legs. Was there a weak spot? There, between the back legs. There's exposed machine parts. The police squad responded immediately, aiming a barrage towards the first Bastette's weak point. They practiced the routine many times at shooting ranges. They were organized, so they were reloading one at a time, in formation. The second Bastet was on the God team now from the other direction. "We need to get them off those kids," Jack shouted. "I'm going in." He lowered his head and charged forward. As he did, he could see another side of the Great Pyramid open up into a dark warehouse. Red laser light poured from the door, and the heads of 3 more Bastets poked out, their razor teeth clamping and biting at air. 5 Bastets. The NDO was responding to the attack. This was happening. Vultures. Seteth was first in the rotation to the mouth of the pyramid. He dove inside and started reloading. The rain was intense now, blinding him, but they had a plan to stick to. He was finished reloading by the time Cleopatra, then lastly the eagle, slid inside. Beyond that threshold, revealed by the lightning and the laser light, Seteth could see 3 Bastets now, and he also noticed a barrage of bullets bouncing off of them from some outside source. Who else was out there? There was no time to think about it. They were inside the Great Pyramid. It was now or never to start blasting open doors. Remembering the map, Seteth barreled down the first hallway and took a turn towards the prison cells. The eagle and his sister were right behind him. "This is crazy," Cleopatra said. Her eyes were wild. Not fearful, though. She looked eager for more. "Is everyone okay?" the eagle yelled. The 2 others let out affirmative grunts. All 3 of them reloaded now and were sprinting down the labyrinth of hallways. This would have been impossible without the information the eagle had gathered. Seteth was pleasantly surprised they had gotten so far, but he knew that the Bastets could be the only defense in the NDO arsenal. His eyes were sweeping back and forth for more danger. Behind them, the cats were clumsily swiping into the building and ripping through the walls, trying to make the opening wider so that they could get in. But the team was already deep into the hallways, and the cats wouldn't be able to shove their way into. On cue, there was a crackle of loudspeakers turning on all around them, and then a scratchy voice came through the speakers, hurting their ears. "Welcome to hell, God scum," the voice echoed. There came another sound, like leather flapping in the wind. What was that? The eagle saw the first vulture come around the corner of the hallway and soar towards them. Then, behind it, 100 more vultures, rounding the corner like bats, in a swarm towards them. "Not good," Seth yelled. "We're at the first door. Get it open," the eagle responded, sticking to the plan. Cleopatra aimed down at the handle and fired 3 rounds. The vultures were here. Suddenly, Seth's body felt like it was on fire. The birds screeched and their talons were ripping into his back. His whole line of vision was suddenly overwhelmed by birds of prey. Wings, feathers, and talons were everywhere. All 3 of them were screaming, and the birds were ripping at their flesh. They were in a sea of claws and screeches. Through the frenzy, there was only one spot in the hallways where the vultures weren't swarming, and in it, a man was walking towards them. He was tall and thin like a skeleton, with long white hair and cold blue eyes. He was wearing a black tuxedo with chainmail breastplate. Behind him, he was dragging a long chain. He spoke again, and he must have had a microphone somewhere in his mouth, because his voice echoed all around them through the hallways. "You think you could come into my prison? I'll have my birds shred you into paper." The door swung open. The birds flocked in. The room was dark. The back side of the door was blackened by flames from the past. Everything was beaks and claws. Seteth could feel hot blood oozing down his arms and back. He could barely see his companions through the swarm of birds. Then something else happened. A small ember at first, and then in seconds it grew into an orange flame. The piercing screams of the vultures changed from predatory to alarmed. Seteth watched with wide eyes, and the sea of them caught fire, one at a time, but very quickly. And then suddenly, as they began to litter the ground, crispy like fried chicken, another humanoid was there next to him. She was fantastic, tall and powerful with long black hair and eyelashes. Her expression was fierce yet calm, focused on what she was doing. Her hands were red hot, and flames were leaping off her fingertips at the vultures, systematically delivering the wrath of a god who'd been imprisoned her entire life. She hadn't acknowledged Seteth and the others. Her attention zeroed in on the sea of flames, but it was a controlled fire somehow, and though Seth could feel the heat on his torn flesh, the flames themselves stayed away from him. Through the flames and the hundreds of dying vultures, Anubis locked eyes with the skeleton man. "Oh, fuck," he said, and then his microphone turned off. "You're mine now," Anubis swore. He turned the opposite way and ran through the last layer of his vulture pets out of sight. Anubis chased him down the hallway, keeping her body surrounded by the red-hot flames, incinerating the vultures now on contact. Seteth started to chase her, but the eagle said, "Let her go. We need these doors open." And he was right. The three of them fanned out, stepping around the corpses of what had to be 100 vultures. All three of them looked awful, covered in wet sand, and their bodies were bloodied, raw, with scratches from the birds. But they were all still standing. They each picked a door and took aim at the doorknobs, blasting through the locks. 1, 2, 3. More doors were kicked open. There were 10 doors in total, and the team got all of them open before they even stopped to look inside a single one. Time was of the essence. But none of the other gods exploded out in a fury like the fire girl had. Seteth couldn't blame them. He could remember being contained in solitude for so long. His heart ached for his fellow deities, but it wasn't time to be sentimental. More footsteps came from the opposite side of the hallway. The eagle stretched out both arms with his handguns and took aim. Jack Winehouse held up his hands. "I'm an ally," he yelled. The eagle made a goofy expression as his truth eye flooded him with information about the police captain. The eagle lowered his guns. "Your team outside, the Bastards?" He could barely make out words to describe what his eye was telling him. It was awful. "I'm Police Captain Jack Winehouse. I came here on authority of the state in response to the attack on the Mesmer estate." The eagle shook his head. "No time for that. Your team isn't going to make it if we don't get out there now." Winehouse nodded and spun on his heels. "What about the other gods?" Cleopatra asked. "They're free now. We've done what we came to do. Our top priority is to get the hells out of here," the eagle said. "I don't think they're going to let us just walk out of here," Seteth said. "Oh, we're fighting our way out, and I'm taking down any Bastet that gets in our way." The eagle was still confident after all of that. Cleopatra nodded in agreement. The four of them raced back down the hallway and turned the corner. There were 2 Bastets still clawing at the walls of the hallway, shoving their way inside the blowing smoke out of their nostrils. They were snarling. It sounded like gears grinding and 3-foot-long incisors ripping away chunks of concrete. "Let's take a stand here while they're trying to get in," Captain Winehouse said. The eagle nodded. The 4 of them planted their feet and opened fire. "You know about the weak spot," the eagle shouted at the police captain to confirm it. "Cleo, watch their backs," the eagle said. Cleopatra turned around while reloading. Seteth hit one of the Bastet's programming centers, and sparks began to fly. As the machine cat glitched out, its body stiffened like a corpse in rigor mortis. Its body took a tumble, and the other Bastet tripped over it. "Okay, go, go, go," the eagle shouted. They walked forward, still firing at the second Bastet. At the mouth of the Great Pyramid, the eagle hit the towering animal in the weak spot, and it too collapsed. "Cover me," Seteth shouted. There were 3 more sets of paws clawing their way in through the collapsed roof, and they'd made a dent, to say the least. The entryway into the Great Pyramid was now hollowed out, stretching down the hallway. But the cats were fighting against each other to get at the gods, and it was making them take longer. Seteth was glad for their clunky programming. What had before seemed like animalistic behavior, he could now tell was a lack of communication between the Bastets. That's where they had them beat. Now they just had to finish them off. Seteth raised his hands toward the sky, and the storm thickened again. Rain slashed down to the Bastets, and there was steam everywhere. As the eagle, Cleopatra, and Jack Winehouse watched, all 3 of the weak points of the angry Bastets began to glow as they picked up Seteth's directed electrical charge. Another crash of low thunder. Seth brought his hands down and clapped them together. The lightning came down again. This time it chained between all 3 Bastets, tearing through their programming systems. For a few moments, as they fried, the Bastets twitched and jerked around, and the lightning crackled as it skewered the 3 of them before the god. The eagle was in awe of Seteth now. He'd never seen such raw power, even though his eye had warned him to expect it from the god of chaos. The eagle made a note to stay on Seteth's good side, but he knew that was historically unlikely. For his eye had told him that throughout the stream of infinite past lives, Horus and Seteth almost always were the cause of each other's demise. This was a truth that he would keep to himself. The smoking bodies of the Bastets sunk into the wet sand, finally motionless. Jack Winehouse called out the names of the team members he'd arrived with. The storm kept raging, drowning out his hoarse voice, but he was afraid that wasn't the reason the cops weren't responding to him. He pushed out of rank, running outside and searching for his squad. He found them. He found the bodies one at a time, scattered, as they had each ran in separate directions when the Bastets got close to them. 3 of them were dead, and one, the woman, was unconscious. "My gods, what have I done?" Jack said, blaspheming the human right. It was true. The New Dynasty Order had executed 3 police officers. This had escalated from a dispute into a war. Jack couldn't believe it. All 3 of the bodies were men he'd known for years. How many times had they rode into battle together, all to lead to this? Their bodies mangled and twisted in the wet sand. "Help me get her onto my speeder," Jack said. The eagle helped Jack pick up the woman and fasten her onto the passenger seat. "She needs urgent medical attention, but she's going to make it," the eagle said. Jack wanted to ask how he knew, or if he really knew for sure, but there was a confidence so deep within the eagle's words that the police captain had no place asking for him to prove himself. The 3 other bodies would have to stay there, for the sake of saving the wounded. It made Jack sick to think about their families, their funerals without their bodies. This was the greatest tragedy he'd faced in his long career with the police. Was it his fault for bringing them there? He should have brought an army, not a squadron. Would that only have resulted in more deaths? So, were you just going to leave those speeders here then, or? Seteth asked the captain. Jack Winehouse revved his engine. He wanted to ask the gods to come with him for questioning. He knew they wouldn't come with him. He looked them up and down one last time. They weren't monsters like the Bastets. They were just kids. They were hunted and deprived of the very freedoms that Jack fought to protect. He had a feeling their paths would cross again. "Take them," he said. "Just don't make this worse."